Hello students, good morning. I welcome you all for today's session. I would like to start my session with a quote by Robert M. Hensel. The quote goes like this: "There is no greater disability in society like the inability to see a person as a mode." So, it is we who are disabled if we see someone to be less important. Let's understand the fact that it's the Lord who has tailored each and every being, and hence there will be no defects in His creation. It is our ignorance to see defect in anyone. Physical disability in anyone should not be seen as a criteria to judge a person's ability or quality. In today's class, we are going to read a play which deals with two such characters who have been isolated and alienated by the society. Before going into further details, let us know a little about the author Susan Hill. So, about Susan Hill, she was born in February 1942 in England. She is an English author of various fiction and non-fiction works like The Women in Black, The Mist in the Mirror, and I Am the King of the Castle. She received the Somerset Maugham Award in 1971 for her work in I Am the King of the Castle. So now, knowing about the author, let me introduce to the hard words, the difficult words that are present in the text, so that you can comprehend the lesson easily. So the name of the lesson is On the Face of It. The first word is defiant, which means refusing to obey. The second word is rustling. So you all would have heard the rustling sound. Usually in the season of autumn, you can see the leaves falling from the tree and they produce soft sounds. So that soft sounds of leaves rubbing gently on one another is rustling. The next word is crab apples. So the crab apples are different from the normal apple. They differ in the taste. Apples that are sour and used for preparing jam and jelly are crab apples. The fourth word is windfall. Apples that have been blown off the trees by wind are called as windfalls. Weed. So weeds are wild plants. Daft. The sixth word is daft and it means foolish. So now let me explain the title of the play. So the title is a phrase. It is on the face of it. What does it mean, on the face of it? It means to judge by appearances, at the first glance or on the surface. Let me give you an example and make it clear. See, in the slide you can see two pictures. In one of the picture you can see an apple which looks hale and healthy, and in the other picture you can see a rotten apple. See, on the face of it the apple looks good, but when you cut it you can see it is rotten inside. So you can put it like this: on the face of it the apple looks good, but inside it is rotten. So on the face of it means anything on the surface. Now before going to the play, let me introduce to the two important characters of the play. One is Derry, a boy of 14 years old with a burnt face, and hence he is withdrawn, and he is a person who is longing for love. And the other most important character is Mr. Lamb. He is an old man with tin legs. He has lost his leg in war due to bomb explosion, and he lives in a big house with a big garden, and he is always lonely, appears to be mysterious, but he is a man with positive thinking. So now our play revolves around these two characters. So let's go to this interesting play. One day Mr. Lamb was sitting in his garden behind a screen of bushes. It was then Derry, a boy of 15 years, gained entry into the garden by jumping over the compound wall. Thinking that the garden was empty, he started walking through the long grass. As he was walking, he was startled when Mr. Lamb said, "Be careful." Mr. Lamb said so because some crab apples have fallen down on the ground, and due to the wind, he did not want Derry to trip over the apples and fall. But Derry, who was withdrawn by nature, tried to leave the place immediately when he came to know of the presence of Mr. Lamb. But Lamb's friendly talk, unmindful nature, and concerned behavior made Derry express his anger and bitterness to him. He was angry and defensive when Lamb asked him the reason for jumping over the wall, though the gates were open. Derry told him that he is an unwelcome guest everywhere and people are afraid of seeing his burnt face. He explains Mr. Lamb how people react on seeing him. They either make sarcastic remarks on him or pity him. He also confesses how he is afraid of looking at himself in the mirror. He himself is afraid of looking himself in the mirror. The reaction of the people around him had made Derry feel different and less important. Mr. Lamb, who was listening to Derry, now changed the topic by started to talk about how he is going to pick the crab apples and make jelly. This attitude of Mr. Lamb made Derry very angry. He felt that Mr. Lamb had changed the topic intentionally. He expressed his wish to be questioned by Mr. Lamb about his burnt face. So Lamb paid heed to him. He questioned him about his burnt face. Now Derry reveals the reason for his burnt face. He reveals that his face got burnt by acid. And he also said that the acid not only burnt his face but also his confidence. Then Mr. Lamb directed Derry's attention to the corner of his garden. He questioned Derry about what he sees in the corner of the garden. Derry initially mistook the weeds to be rubbish and he said it is rubbish in the corner of his garden. But later he realized that to be weeds and he said those are weeds in the corner of your garden. Mr. Lamb now tapped his thought process by asking Derry, why is that one is called a flower and another a weed when both are living plants? Both are same, but why do we give different names? One is called a flower, another a weed. He now opined that it was just a matter of perspective. So Mr. Lamb says it is not the thing, it is only the perception which gives it a different name. He proposed Derry to change his view or his way of viewing the world and himself. He advocated Derry to turn deaf ears to what people say about his appearance. He says, don't bother whatever the people say, let them talk. You just turn deaf ears to whatever they say. It was at this juncture Mr. Lamb points out his tin leg and proclaims that both are sailing the same boat. He said that he has got used to being called Lammy Lamb by the children. Derry did not agree to that. He retorted that Mr. Lamb could hide his impairment by wearing long trousers, and that is not so in his case. He could not escape the staring eyes of the people. So he doesn't agree with Lamb's way of saying that both are same. At this instant, Lamb cites the story of the Beauty and the Beast, to which Derry responded that he could not be kissed by anyone as the beast is kissed by the beautiful girl, and there wouldn't any change taking place in him. He also said that even his mother avoided kissing him on the burnt side. He painfully expressed that once he heard a woman telling to another woman that his face was the most terrible thing in the world and only a mother could kiss this boy. At this point of time, Mr. Lamb reiterated to turn deaf ears to anything which is said. He kept on stressing that turn deaf ears. He even narrates a story of a man who was scared of everything in this world. The man was scared to the extent that he kept himself inside a locked room and always stayed on the bed, thinking that he'll be safe being so. But as destiny would have it, he died when a picture from a wall fell on his head. Mr. Lamb, being an adult and having lived with an impairment for a long time, had learned to count the blessings and live happily. On the contrary, Derry feels low and had shunned himself from the outside world. These both are contrasting characters. But Mr. Lamb is not the person who gives up. He wants to change this fellow's attitude towards life. He keeps giving him positive things. Mr. Lamb's positive talk and way of viewing things had slowly changed the attitude of Derry. Mr. Lamb told him that hatred towards others is worse than the acid that has burnt his face. He says having hatred towards others is like having acid into your body and it will burn you. It will burn your own self, and that is worse than the acid that has burnt your face. He said that he did not show any hatred to the boys who called him Lammy Lamb and when they come to his garden, he welcomes them with a happy face. The attitudinal change of Derry is taking place, and the change is very distinct when he changes the topic from his disfigured face to the plucking of the crab apples. Now it is not Mr. Lamb who is changing the topic, Derry who is changing the topic from his disfigured face to the plucking of the crab apples. He has changed to the extent of telling Mr. Lamb that he could come back to the garden and help him. He went home to inform his mom about his intention to help Mr. Lamb. Though his mother was reluctant to send him, as she was under the assumption that Mr. Lamb is a mysterious person, Derry ascertained that he would go to the garden to help Mr. Lamb. He was very determined to go to the garden again, because Derry feels that if he did not go back, he would never go anywhere in this world. He was very clear that he wanted the world, and he is different in viewing things now. He is not the same what he was before. The Lamb, being full of positive notion, had seeded the same in the mind of Derry. Now Derry is full of positive attitude. Derry will no longer be alienated from this world. So, children, let us all be positive. Let us always spread positive vibes. Let us only emanate only positive energy. Let us see everyone as more. So this is the moral behind this play. So students, have you all got the message of the play? So let me see how far you have understood the story. Shall we go for the question session? Okay, the first question. What is the attitude of Mr. Lamb to the small boy who comes to his garden? And the second one. Why, according to Derry, has the old man changed the subject? And the third one. In what ways does Mr. Lamb inspire Derry to overcome his physical disability? So children, please try answering these questions. So have you understood the story? It will be easy for you to answer the questions. So now I think you have got the message of this play. Now let us go to the poem, which is also as interesting as this prose piece, and at the same time regarding the theme, it is also in parallel to this play. Shall we see what the poem is? The name of the poem is The Fog by W.H. Davies. So before we go to the poem, let's have a glimpse about the poet W.H. Davies. William Henry Davies was born on 3rd July 1871. He was a Welsh poet and a writer. He was one of the most popular poets of his time. The principal themes in his work are observation about life's hardships, the ways in which the human condition is reflected in nature, his own tramping adventures, and the various characters he met. So now, before we go to the poem, let me make clear the title of the poem. The title of the poem is Fog, and you all should know the meaning of the word fog, but let me brush your meaning about the word fog. So what is fog? Fog is a cloud of small water droplets that is near ground level and sufficiently dense to reduce horizontal visibility. So now let's go to the poem. It's a poem of 6 stanzas with 4 lines each. Before going to the poem, let us see the words, difficult words, so that you get the meaning of the poem as I read it. Ken is the first word. Ken means senses. So all the 5 senses, taste, smell, hearing, sight and touch. So ken means senses. Clutch. Clutch means grasp, holding something tightly. That is clutch. The third one is rap the stones, means tapping the stones. This is usually done by the blind people as they use a white stick to find their way. Now coming to the poem. Stanza 1. Let me read the poem for you, then I'll go for the explanation. So I'll go by each and every stanza. And here in each slide, you have the poem to the one side and the paraphrase to the other side. So stanza 1. I saw the fog grow thick, which soon made blind my ken. It made tall men of boys and giants of tall men. So in the first stanza, the poet says that once as he was walking, he saw the fog growing thick suddenly. It It grew thick to that extent that it made him blind, and the visibility was obscure that boys appeared to be tall men and tall men appeared to be giants. Now coming to the stanza 2, it is, it clutched my throat, I coughed, nothing was in my head except two heavy eyes like balls of burning lead. Now, being in the fog has started taking its effect on the poet. So once if you're in a fog, there are some physical complaints which you will come across. The first effect of the fog on the poet is it clutched its throat. His throat was choked to that extent that he couldn't utter a word. He started coughing. Nothing was in my head. Now his head has become empty. He couldn't think. He has lost the power of reasoning. And regarding the eyes, he can feel the eyes, but the visibility is not as clear as before. He could feel his eyes are heavy, and at the same time they are hot to the extent it's like a burning lead. Now stanza 3. And when it grew so black that I could know no place, I lost all judgment then of distance and of space. Now slowly the fog is drawing a blanket on the poet. Initially the visibility was obscure. Now it is total black. He says that he has lost the light in his eyes and it is complete darkness. He was not able to decide where he is and where he should move. He had no idea of the distance he has covered and how much yet to cover. So that is what the line means. I lost all judgment then of distance and of space. So he has traveled a distance and he doesn't know how far he has traveled, and now he is not clear with how far he should travel to reach his home. The street lamps and the lights upon the halted cars could either be on earth or be the heavenly stars. In stanza 4, we see the poet is now the state, just like the state of a blind man. So everything is dark for him. And now he knows that there are street lamps and the lights fall on the halted cars, but he couldn't distinct whether those lights are from the street lamps or from the stars in the sky. Coming to stanza 5, since he has come to the state of a blind man, now the poet has to seek the help of someone to reach home. So he asks for someone to help him. A man passed by me close. I asked my way. He said, "Come, follow me, my friend." I followed where he led. So since he is seeking for help, a passerby agreed to help him. While the poet walked thus, a stranger passed by, and the poet sought the help of the passerby to find his way. He was asked by the passerby to follow him. So he followed him without suspecting him. The last stanza ends like this. He rapped the stones in front. "Trust me," he said, "and come." I followed like a child. A blind man led me home. So in the last stanza, we see that the passerby has helped him to reach her house. But the poet doesn't make it clear whether it is his house or the passerby's house. So let us take it to be the passerby's house. Finally, they have reached a house, and the passerby rapped the walls of the stone house. And now he asks the poet to follow him inside. The poet followed him without doubting, without questioning him like a child. Once inside the house, the poet learns the fact that the passerby who led him to the house is a blind man. He was astonished of the fact. See, he is born with full visibility, and now here he is being guided by a blind man to reach the house. So this is a very astonishing fact for the poet. So the stanza 6 is the end of the poem, and it ends with a revelation that the person who leads another person is a blind man. So this being the poem, now children, let's discuss about the message of the poem. What is the poet trying to ascertain by writing this poem? See, he is not here to describe the fog or the effects it has on the human being. So he is trying to convey a different message.
What is the message the poet is trying to convey through this poem? Shall we take it this way? The poem is about the people stressed only what they see and lack awareness of faith, belief, and religion. And one more thing which we can consider also, that we all take things for granted. Since we are born with eyes, we don't tune the other senses of us. Nothing is certain in this world. Once if we lose one sense, we should have tuned the other senses so that it comes of help to us. So even this you can take into consideration. So have you all got the message of the poem? Okay. Now let me see how far you have got the message. Shall we go to the question session? How and when did the poet know that the man was blind? So when did the poet know that the man was blind? Only at the end of the poem. The last stanza tells, it comes with a revelation that the passerby is a blind. What is the settings of the poem? Where's the poem set? Where's the scene set? It is actually on the road. As the poet is walking, suddenly he is covered by a fog and a blind man leans into the house. How did the fog change the appearance of the world? See, once when the fog comes in, the appearance of the whole world changes. Boys seem to be like tall men and tall men seem to be like giants. What was the effect of the loss of judgment upon the poet? So, losing the judgment power, what happens to the poet? He says that he couldn't guess how far he has traveled and he couldn't guess how much more he has to travel to reach his place. What clutched the poet's throat and how? The fog clutched his throat, and it has clutched to that extent that he couldn't utter a word or speak to anyone else. So, are you clear with the answers now?
Students, let us see the poetic devices employed in the poem. So, the three poetic devices are involved in this poem. The first one is personification. Let me explain that part of it in the poem. In the first part of the poem, the fog is given different human qualities such as grasping and gripping. So, here the fog is personified. Hence, personification is employed in this poem. And the next poetic device used in this poem is simile. So, when the poet talks about his eye due to the effect of the fog, he says that two heavy eyes like balls of burning lead. So, he compares the burning sensation of his eyes to that of a burning lead. So, the word like is used here, and so it is a simile. And the last poetic device which is also employed in this poem is metaphor. It seems to be a extended metaphor that is used in this poem. Metaphorically looking at the poem, the fog represents doubt and confusion that can surround a man, making his thinking numb. On the contrary, the man who leads him is blind and is free from doubt and confusion. The blind here is not blinded by the fog like the poet.
So, what does extended metaphor mean? An extended metaphor is a metaphor in a literary work, such as a novel or poem, that is not used in one line but is extended over multiple lines or throughout the work. So, when we say metaphor, we stick to one particular line, but when we say extended metaphor, it will not stick to one particular line, but it will extend to multiple lines throughout the work. So, now let us see how is it employed in this poem. The poet in this poem repeatedly draws comparison between certain things. See, he says, due to the dense fog, boys look like men and men look like giants. And regarding the light that falls on the cars, it is not very clear whether it is due to the street light or the one which comes from the stars. And the whole poem is metaphorical way. Metaphorically looking at the poem, the fog represents doubt and confusion that can surround a man, making his thinking dumb. On the contrary, the man who leads him is blind and is free from doubt and confusion. The blind here is not blinded by the fog like the poet. So, the whole poem is more of metaphor. It is metaphorically written by the poet. So, are you clear of this poetic devices, children? So, thank you for lending me your ears. I think this session would have been interesting, at the same time a useful one also. So, let me meet you in the next class. Till then, students, bye from me now.